Now we're going to understand owners funds. Students, we have learned with the classification of funds, and we have learned that on the basis of ownership there are two classifications, that is owners fund and borrowed funds. So we're going to understand the first broad category of sources of business finance, that is owners fund. First one, we're going to start with that of retained earnings. Okay, now retained earnings. See, at the end of every year, a business earns a profit. A portion of profit is being distributed as dividend to the shareholders to make them happy, and a portion is again back reinvested into the business, that is known as retained earnings. So, a portion of profit which is again flowed back into the business, it is known as retained earnings. Now, features of retained earnings we're going to see. That means it refers to the blowing back of the profits. We are again reinvesting our profits into our business. There is no external liability. We don't have to pay any sort of interest or any other. A company is under no pressure to pay any extra sort of liability towards such kind of sources of finance. Third one, this source of finance is not available to newly established companies. See, when a company is newly established, that company will going to earn the profit in the upcoming years. That company will not going to have any sort of previous year's profit, and if previous year's profit will not be there will be no question of retained earnings. That is why this source of finance is not available to the newly established companies. Fourth one, the amount of retained earnings depends upon the various factors like earning capacity, your dividend policy, etc. Now students, your retained earnings naturally depends upon your profits, because out of the profits only we are again reinvesting the things into the business, and moreover it's our dividend policy. कैसी अपनी डिविडेंड पॉलिसी, जितना डिविडेंड देंगे उससे बचा हुआ फिर अपन बिजनेस में री इन्वेस्ट करेंगे. सो इट ऑल्सो डिपेंड्स अपॉन द डिविडेंड पॉलिसी. Coming to the next one, that is merits of retained earnings. Now, first one, it is a permanent source of finance with no external liability. Every time the company will or business will going to earn the profit, and every time there will be no external liability or pressure to pay interest and other things. That is why it is a permanent source of finance. Second one, company enjoys freedom in utilizing retained earnings and does not involve any external pressure. Now, the money which is being earned by us, nobody is there who will going to interfere in the way we are utilizing it. In the same manner, retained earnings also are the earnings which are being earned by the company. That is why company enjoys freedom in utilizing it. The company may utilize in compensating the losses of the previous year, in paying for the any of the outstanding expenses. It all depends upon the company. Third one, it is a very economical source of finance, and it does not involve any cost in the terms of interest, flotation cost. Okay, so while raising the finance, we require a cost which is known as flotation cost. The initial cost of raising the finance is known as flotation cost. For example, when we are raising the finance with the help of equity shares, we have to issue the prospectus, obtain the permissions of that of SEBI, stock exchange. At the same time, we have to conduct the annual general meeting of the shareholders. All this considered and requires expenses. So flotation cost is not there for the retained earnings. Moreover, no interest has to be paid. That is why it becomes quite an economical source of finance. Coming to the next one, that is your retained earnings. Now, retained earnings also enhances the capacity of business to face shocks, surprises in a better manner. If we are having savings in the form of retained earnings, the market is giving us whether the shocks or the surprises, business will be able to face both the things in a very proper and confident manner. Coming to that of the limitations, it is very uncertain source of finance. Why is it an uncertain source of finance? Because your profits keeps on fluctuating. That is why your retained earnings will also going to fluctuate. That is why it becomes a quite uncertain source of finance. High amount of retained earnings from the net profit may cause dissatisfaction among the shareholders, as it may reduce the rate of dividend. Now, whenever you are keeping aside more retained earnings and declaring a less dividend to that of the shareholders, it may cause dissatisfaction to your shareholders. Next one, there is a risk of overcapitalization also. If there is no growth opportunities coming in the upcoming future, and at that time you are keeping a more part of your profits as a retained earnings, there will be idle funds keeping with you, and this will lead to that of overcapitalization. So here we have completed with the retained earnings. Okay, now we're going to do equity share capital in the next video. Thank you.